Hello, everybody, and welcome to Crossing the Line with Greg Heym and Lone Daddy himself, Scott Nadler. How you doing, buddy?
I'm fantastic. It's good to be back.
It is great to be back. We got Ray and Lena here helping us stay on the air and making sure we don't say the wrong things. You know,
not an easy job.
We usually, talk about the weekend and what you did, but I know one thing that we all did this weekend was watch the Knicks trounce the Celtics. Yes.
Man, the energy in the city, we were just talking about it. Oh, my God.
If there was one game you wanted to be at, in hindsight, I would have paid anything to be there and the excitement. I think that you could talk about, Boston didn't have its best player, but that didn't stop us from winning the first two games. And we did lose the prior game. It reminds me of St. John's. I may have to put a Thibodeau bobblehead.
I don't know about Thibodeau. Maybe Jalen Brunson.
You got to win first.
But we can't do anything now. We got to wait until the seaseason's over. We don't want to
see. Alfred E. Newman doesn't have a ring. Ron Guidry's got two, and Rick Pitino's got a bunch of NCAA
He's got a bunch.
champions. Yeah. So maybe we'll put him there. It was a thorough beatdown from the beginning. They played defense.
They played great. They played absolutely great. And, in New York, you've got the Jets and the Giants, you've got the Yankees and the Mets, and those fan bases are split. But it seems like everyone rallies around the Knicks.
Well, the people in Brooklyn may go looking for us, but no one in New York City cares about the Nets.
Correct.
They haven't been relevant. They've never won. They won a couple of ABA championships. So they never won an NBA championship. That being said, in like 80 years or whatever it is of the NBA, the Knicks have only won twice, so their record's not much better. But there's nothing more popular in New York City than when the Knicks are winning.
So there's a bar that I go to with a bunch of friends. It's a Knicks bar.
We wouldn't know this, right? Because we're not invited to go.
You guys are always invited.
Oh, maybe if we paid.
Oh, no, you don't have to pay. You're in.
Okay.
Oh, we have a standing table. We're good.
Wait, I have to stand at the table?
You're probably gonna stand, but so a van pulls up outside of the bar. It's a Knicks van. It's huge, and it has a basketball hoop on the back. And they have basketballs, and they have like a staff, and people are like throwing balls to people, having them shoot. And the ball is like no one's caring that the ball is going into oncoming traffic, and traffic is just stopping. So this was so. New York, a UPS driver is trying to get through, and he stops, and like the door is his door is open.
Right.
He like calls for the ball, wants to take a couple shots. He like wasn't upset that like traffic was disturbed. It was just this guy. He wants to take a shot. It was the energy in the city was incredible.
Now I had a gig Friday night, but luckily the TV was on. That's the only reason I got my son to come to the gig.
You were multitasking.
So I had two.
Explains the applause.
Two of the TVs, yes. Well, it's weird because when you play restaurant gigs, obviously people don't applaud after every song. Although being that 75% of the crowd was friends and family, you actually did get a lot of applause. But, here you're watching and you're trying to stay focused on the song you're playing, and you're seeing these threes rain down, and it's like, wow, wait, are we really up 30? Like, wow, when did that happen?
Lucky for you, the game was over pretty early.
Well, it enabled us to have a really good time.
Even Lena watched.
No, really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. Well, you know what? There's some things worth watching. You don't get to see it. It hasn't happened in 25 years. And every time we play the Pacers, we think of two things. Reggie Miller's like 8 points in less than 20 seconds or whatever it was, and a finger roll. That's all we think of, and we get this hatred. And losing last year in the playoffs, but we had a bunch of injuries. This year we're healthy.
Fun series. It's going to be gritty.
We're coming for you. That's it. It's been a wild playoff season in the NBA and the NHL. I mean, it really, Winnipeg went down this weekend to Dallas. Very exciting series. Florida took out Toronto. I think Austin Matthews is now like 0-7 or 0-8.
The contrast between the regular season and the playoffs is so wide right now. It's the playoffs have been incredible.
It's been exciting, really good. And then we saw OKC trounce Denver yesterday. It shows you Jokic is the whole team.
They were limping a lot yesterday.
It was rough.
Yeah.
OKC. I mean, it's going to be interesting to watch them play
Minnesota.
the T-Wolves.
Yeah.
It's
a four teams that are very young, which is good.
No, the
future's bright.
And Randall, good for him.
Good for him. I agree.
The guy played hard for us. All right, so and the Yankees took 2 out of 3 from the Mets. It was an exciting series. It's funny. Usually that would be the focus, but everybody's looking at the Knicks game because that's where the excitement is. So, all right, before we get into the nitty gritty and actually why we do this podcast, we could talk about the Knicks for a very long time. Look, it was great for Greg's sports teams. You got the Yankees taking 2 out of 3, the Knicks winning. The only thing that could have made it better, Woody Johnson selling the Jets. That being said,
didn't happen this weekend.
We will, and even they're looking okay. The draft was pretty good, but they'll find a way to mess it up. But we'll be back with the news of last week and some funny, pretty interesting stories right here from Studio 1873 after these messages.
Your dream home is closer than you think. I'm Scott Nadler, VP of Mortgage Lending at CrossCountry Mortgage, and I'm here to get you the perfect loan to match your perfect home. From first-time home buyers to seasoned homeowners, I've helped clients make their moves with confidence. Ready for a smooth, stress-free home buying experience? Let's get you moving today. Call me and let's turn those dreams into keys.
Hi, I'm Evan Greenberg with Langdon Title. I specialize in title insurance across New York, helping real estate attorneys, agents, and brokers close with confidence. I solve problems fast and keep your deals moving. Contact me anytime.
All right, Loan Daddy, we're back. I'm not big into theming things, but when something presents itself, I have to. So this is sort of the...
When anyone starts a sentence with "I'm not into something,"
and then they do it, you're like, you want to slap them, right?
Yeah.
So this is what I'm calling the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Okay.
Right? Because
you just made that up.
It just when I was laying out, what we're going to talk about, everything went into a nice little box.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we'll start with the good because that was the most important. That kind of is more important than the other things because it will help solve the other problems. You'll see as we build this argument. We promise we'll get somewhere.
We'll land this plane.
Yeah, well, we could do it. Come on. An economist and Loan Daddy, how could we fail? I mean, gee, economists make everything better. All right, so the good news came sort of the weekend before, but was certified on Monday that the U.S. and China were suspending most of their tariffs. The fentanyl tariff still is in play for 90 days. And we certainly needed this. It had been a rough go, right? We were hearing all this, the dollar was crashing. We're going to have this mass inflation, all this stuff. And then we kept being told by the administration, relax, let the process work. And, this is not an agreement, but it shows a willingness to negotiate. I know it made me feel better. What about you?
We talked about it here in terms of just waiting. Let's just wait and see.
And that was the most important piece. The other side deals, whether it was at the EU or Japan or wherever, that stuff would be good. But this is what has to happen first.
And they need each other.
Right.
The U.S. is China's biggest client. You don't want to upset your biggest client in any business.
Right.
And the U.S., many industries, many businesses rely on China. So it was inevitable that they were going to come to a deal. I think the markets overall are happy that it came when it came. But again, we were saying for a while, there was such an overreaction in the market to what was happening,
right.
Even though the administration was talking about how this is a negotiating ploy. Like they're kind of tipping their hand. And now we're seeing that, we'll see what ends up happening, but it's a great sign.
And, your administration is filled with people that made a lot of money negotiating for a living. So, but I could see why people may not want to trust the government because that was never hip, right?
Yep.
Ray, even back in the day, you don't trust the man.
Or trust foreign governments also.
Yeah, no. Trust but verify, right? That's what he always used to say. So this news broke, and right away, these economists who are way too pessimistic, calling for recessions, economists at Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and others, immediately lowered their
Those
chances.
forecasts changed very, very quickly.
Well, you knew that would happen. That would be the one. The only thing that would have been bigger is we have a deal.
Right.
90 days, we better have a deal. After 90 days of this, all the fun from this will go away. But we also found out about the good side of these tariffs that we were promised. A lot of times we always hear that, we pass these tax cuts, we're going to lower the deficit, and you scratch your head a little bit and you go, what? But this case, we knew that, people say, well, people still import things, especially since we saw record imports in the months leading up to April, right? And what we found was that the receipts for tariffs in April were over $16 billion. That's 86% more than the prior month and more than double a year ago.
Mm-hmm. Massive.
So that certainly helps. You can argue about other harmful potential consequences, which I will argue against a little later on in the podcast, but that's a real amount of money, right?
If you're any business, and if you look at the government like a business, you want to figure out a way to increase your revenues. And this is how they're able to. This is one method of them of them showing that they can do that.
Right.
So these numbers are massive.
Well,
the expenditures, they're not quite there yet. So
Right.
It seems like the expenditures have been higher than what they would have expected. But on the revenue side, it's
if there's no revenue, then this all blows up. Then it becomes even more unpopular than it already is.
For sure.
You're going to put people through that kind of pain, and you're not going to have anything to show for it. But the stock market loved it. S&P up 5%, NASDAQ up 7%, less chance of a recession. It's all good, right?
It's all good on that front. I think when you look at what's been happening in the bond market and with mortgage rates in our world, that's the other side of the coin.
Well, this next item should help, and that's we got the CPI report, and lower than expected in April.
You would think it would help, but go ahead.
Well, again, despite the start of the tariffs, we know that a lot of people bought a lot of stuff before. Just like a lot of stuff got imported here before April, a lot of stuff got bought here before April. But the headline number up 0.2%, 2.3% higher than a year ago. But we look at core, because food and energy prices can be volatile, up also 0.2% last month and 2.8% year over year. Now,
how about the 3-month run rate went from 2.9% to 2.1%?
Well, and the 2.8% Greg, that's above 2%. Yeah. It's also the lowest year over year increase since March of 21. So that's not bad.
And owner's equivalent rent is the big component that was contributing to
more than 50%. And it's even the BLS puts it in their press release. They say more than half this number is for shelter, as they call it.
Right.
Again, we haven't used shelter since the days of dragons, I think, but okay, whatever. So that was good. Again, the difference, why is core inflation rising at a higher pace than the headline number? Well, there is only one set of prices going down, and that is energy prices. And over the last year, they're down a little under 4%. That brings that headline number down. It does nothing for the core numbers. So, why don't the tariffs bring up prices immediately, right away? Why aren't we seeing? Because tariffs don't cause inflation. How many times can we say it, Rick Pitino? Tariffs don't cause. If Pitino came in and said it, you'd believe it. Again,
he'd be angry when he said it, but
right. But he might wear that white suit
convincing.
that he wore.
Right.
And so why, Greg? Everybody is saying, all these people on TV saying all the time, inflation, inflation, inflation. I don't know why they're saying it, but what's my argument? I can lay it out simply. Okay. Yes, the price of the goods being tariffed, those prices, many of them will go up. Will they go up as much as the tariff on them? No, they won't. So if something's tariffed 25%, that does not mean the price goes up 25%. Depending on how easy it is to get somewhere else, people will buy it somewhere else. The producer could eat the costs or some of the costs. The dollar could strengthen. There's a wide variety of reasons that it's not going to go up by the tariff itself. But let's say even if it did, we all are making the same amount of money. This isn't during like COVID where we all get sent checks and increase the money supply 40%. Inflation, for those of you who still think tariffs are going to cause runaway inflation, too much money chasing not enough goods. There's plenty of goods in here right now. It all got shipped in January, February, and March, at least for now. So now that the money supply is shrinking a little bit, not a lot, but shrinking, Greg has roughly the same amount of money to spend. So if I'm spending more on iPads or guitars, I'm just going to spend less on everything else, and that's going to level off those numbers.
Right.
So stop scaring the you-know-what out of people and explain to me why tariffing certain items causes runaway inflation when we don't have more money to spend. How does that exactly work? I'd love to hear the answer to that.
Email us.
Yeah, look, I know people may say, well, people have been running up all this debt and spending, but we're going to talk about the latest on consumer spending in a minute. But that's not going to cause run. We don't have all of this money to throw at things. We weren't unable to spend money for months at the same time while people were sending us money.
Right. That
situation doesn't exist anymore. Again, the only way you have runaway inflation is typically by printing too much money. And
we just saw that a couple of years ago.
Right. So the argument now is, all right, well, let's forget about it. Let's say you're right, Greg. You can say that all you want. I'm happy when people tell me I'm right. Now, okay, so inflation's coming down. We don't expect it to turn around and start ramping up again because of these tariffs. Then where does this put the Fed, Loan Daddy? They're going to say, look, we're on hold till this whole trade war thing. And though when this data started coming out, all of a sudden the odds the markets were placing on a Fed cut was July. Now it's September, which is what the economists were saying. So maybe the economists actually got this one right.
You're seeing forecasts of 2 cuts, maybe 3 cuts, maybe 1 cut in some instances. The Fed, if you listen to Powell's comments earlier last week, they're changing that target for inflation from 2%. Now it seems to have some wiggle room. Maybe that goes to 2.3%. They're not like so steadfast on it being that 2% target.
It's dynamic, so to speak.
Correct.
As long as we think we're going to get there.
Correct. I think what's fascinating about all this is, and this goes back to something that we spoke about a few episodes ago, is that soft data versus hard data.
Right.
It's the overall sentiment. The consumer out there is feeling as if inflation is going to be higher. I think there was a statistic that since 1980, it's the highest level of inflation expectations by the consumer since 1981.
Well, that's, there's a lot of these surveys done. We're going to talk about consumer sentiment, but the Fed does a survey of consumer expectations too, where they ask, it's all about the future. Everybody thinks things are okay now.
Right.
It's the future that they're worried about. So you're the chairman of the Fed, let's say. I don't know, is an age requirement? He's too young looking to be chairman of the Fed. So what do you do if you're the chairman of the Fed right now?
It's a great question.
I know, that's why I asked it. I'm going to take the rest of the podcast off. You can go ahead and answer.
I would say if you're the Fed right now, you want to try to get ahead of things. And so looking at the data that they have, if you're seeing inflation starting to come down where it is, do you proactively start to cut? I would probably lean in that direction to see, I think it depends on what data you're kind of trusting and, looking at the sentiment, but I would probably start cutting a little bit earlier than what they're probably going to do. They tend to be a little bit slower. They tend to be more reactionary as opposed to being proactive.
Right, and being reactionary, the problem is that any change to monetary policy, you're thinking up to a year for it showing. Then again, what about those cuts we got last year?
Right. We
should start to see some more benefit as the year goes on.
I just think, are we more afraid of inflation going up, or are we more afraid of a
recession?
Recession and the labor market really taking a hit?
Well, lately it's been more fear of recession. That's why we've seen some of the opposite reactions of what we would expect. A blow-away jobs number for April that you would have, that's got to raise rates. And it's like, no, it didn't. Rates went down because everybody's more afraid of recession than inflation. Obviously, inflation is a terrible thing to have. And the thought of maybe stagflation, which we talk about all the time, but very seldom happens. That's when you see inflation sticking around, but the economy's not really growing. You can understand why that's terrible. If prices are going up, but your wage increases aren't keeping up with that, that's a problem.
Right.
At least for now, wage increases are still a little higher than inflation.
Correct.
Year over year. So that is good. All right. Now we're going to move on to the bad, and we're going to wait till after this message. But come back. It's not. We're going to tell you why the bad and the ugly are not so bad and not so ugly. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business. And it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
All right, and we're back. All right, so this bad is not so bad. One thing that was slightly better than expected, but not great news, was retail sales up just 0.1% in April. And you go, yeah, that does sound bad, Greg. What's up with that? And don't you always point out this data is not adjusted for inflation? It's like, yes, I do. But there's a couple of reasons. The main reason is that, again, we talked about goods being rushed in here before the tariffs. Consumer spending skyrocketed in March.
Yeah.
To the tune of a 1.7% increase just in the month of March, not year over year. So a pullback, or you're not going to meet those expectations. It's like if you blow a team out by 40 points, you're probably not going to blow them out by 40 points the next game. So economists were looking for a flat number. So this is actually just slightly, 0.1% better than expected. Where are people spending money? Well, Scott tipped it off. Restaurants and bars, probably watching Knicks games, which saw a 1.2% jump in sales. And again, that's just in the month of April. So, you know, you hear people talk about prices coming down. They're not. But people are still finding a way to spend more money to get less stuff because, again, inflation's not in this equation. That's why you got to look at real incomes, real spending, and we'll get that in the PCE a little later this month. All right, now the ugly. You mentioned it. Consumer sentiment, second lowest level on record. This is University of Michigan's survey. The sentiment number dropped to 50.8. It's an index, like so many things are, down from 52.2. And you go, that's not a big deal, but it's the second lowest reading on record. Why is Greg not worried about it? Because most of the survey was completed before the pause on U.S.-China tariffs. Wouldn't that have made a huge difference?
It would, for sure. And I think from a mortgage rate perspective, you know, would consumer sentiment impact mortgage rates? Yes, because if the sentiment is that inflation is continuing to go up, then what we talked about earlier, people are going to spend money, or the anticipation that people will spend money, which in turn will cause mortgage rates to increase. So from that end of it, does the survey actually mean anything? Again, that goes back to that soft data. No, but it has real consequences.
Right. I mean, we always say wait for the hard data. I mean, sometimes you know how bad things are. The stock market is a good indicator of that.
Correct.
Right. But if you ask people who are struggling with credit card debt, you hear about it's not auto loans now that are going delinquent, it's student loans because now those have to be paid back. You can understand why people would be pretty pessimistic about the future, worried about it. Plus, you know, we're hearing about how everything's so crazy.
A lot of fear mongering.
I know. Well, it sells. We would do it here, but we can't sell it. We're just happy people. Is that true, Lena?
It's true. We have bobbleheads on.
Nobody has ever referred to me as a happy-go-lucky. Well, that just brings the child. And we have Alfred E. Newman here to keep some levity here. Make sure we're not worrying anybody, because his slogan was "What me worry."
So I was in Chicago last week for a conference, and I met with Tim Grover for 2 hours. He was Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade's trainer, but he was more than just like a physical trainer. He was more of like a mental coach. Okay. And what he talked about was, he said how it's so important for people to have more of a childlike attitude. Like, we lose that. You know, I think the average child laughs 300 times a day, whereas the average adult laughs
300 times.
300 times a day, whereas the average adult laughs like 8 to 10 times a day.
I don't know if I laugh 300 times a year. I don't know.
Yeah. So he said it's so important for people to start to clap and congratulate themselves for things, you know, kind of what Ray does for us. And his example was, when you see a baby walk for the first time, you'll see they normally will start clapping. Like, they're clapping. They're normally the first one to clap is the baby when they take a few steps. They're clapping for
Because they know
themselves.
now they're not going to have to hear us going, come on, Gregory, take that step. My son, after he took his first
PTSD?
he took his first step. I got on video, but then he fell back and hit his head very hard on the floor.
Oh.
And I'm on a concrete slab, so it wasn't very. He's
Is
fine.
Is that why he's always walking backwards?
No, that's why he's going to college in the fall in an excellent school. So, no, it's funny when you see kids. There's a joy. Like we were doing this gig Saturday, and a group of 11 came in, and these two adorable little girls who were in their ballerina outfits. I guess they had a recital of some kind, and the wonder that they look at everything. Even the way we were playing, I was like, wow, that's cool. It made me feel good. And then we played songs for them to dance to, and they danced, and it was a lot of fun.
So we could say all of that to say this, that you're right. A lot of the articles that you and I both read, there's a lot. It will always skew more negative, always. And I think what's great about this show is we're just real. We're looking at the data. We have our own interpretation about it, but we're not trying to scare people in any way.
Now, real
is
isn't not AI
happening.
bots, right? You know, just real like is.
Oh, this is the
being
AI
honest.
version of me. I'm not.
I don't know if we can tell the difference.
I'm not here right now.
You know, also we forgot to mention that Scott is debuting a new blazer for the show.
I get more crap from you guys for my outfit choices.
I don't even look at you that much to know.
I will say I have worn the same blazer every single time I've been here.
Right.
It's just part of the rotation. We film on Mondays.
It's Monday blazers. Now
so
we got to check.
I will wear a different blazer today.
Is Monday sewn into the inside of the jacket so you know that's the one to wear?
Exactly. That's the only way that I would know.
The irony is this is the first time I'm wearing this shirt on
I
the
was
show,
gonna
too,
say,
so
yeah, that's a nice.
My
it's
wife,
a great blue for you.
through the one eye she had awake when I was leaving, was like, "Yeah, that looks nice on you."
Yeah.
It's like, all right, go back to sleep. Honey. Don't say anything else. It's going to take away the good mood. Well, you know, so in the interest of keeping it real and even,
I'm happy we didn't talk about the blazer in the ugly section, by the way.
no,
Thank you for that.
It just we remember we were joking about it before the cameras rolled here or before the iPhones were hit. That it was a new blazer, and we were all excited about that.
Yeah,
I look like you got a haircut, but you probably just went to the salon and got it ready.
Yeah,
for the show.
I got hair and makeup done right before.
Of course, there's no
Yeah.
way he looks like that just waking up. See, it's very easy to believe I look like this when I wake up, but you know that's because I'm old. All right, so the other bit of ugly data, sort of, but not really. Moody's downgraded the U.S.'s credit rating, citing growth and government debt. Now we could say, "What's up, Moody's? Why you downgrading us?" But all the other agencies had already done this a couple of years ago. So, and remember, they were the ones, and we see this in our favorite movie. We always talk about The Big Short. They were just rubber stamping the mortgage-backed securities. That they're fine. Don't worry about it. Look, I went like this. Everything's fine. But this isn't good for mortgage rates because you see the yields going up on the longer-term government bonds, and why wouldn't they? Our credit score went down. Now, it went down from the highest rating to the second highest rating, AA1 from AAA, which doesn't sound so scary. If it went from AAA to FFF, then we'd probably be very upset
Right.
if there is such a thing. But what do you...
The 10-year Treasury now, that's something that's a great measure of mortgage rates. I think in the last month or so, the 10-year goes from, in the beginning of May, the 10-year was at 4.11, 4.12. As of an hour ago, it was at 4.55. And we have clients that call all the time and say, instead of calling you every day and asking you where mortgage rates are, how can we follow where rates are? And I would say, the 10-year Treasury is a good indicator of the direction and trend. And even that is kind of hard to follow because clients will say it's at 4.37, it's at 4.44, now it's at 4.30, and it's hard to gauge, and that contributes to the volatility. And you're seeing, rates don't react that quickly to the 10-year. There's going to be a little bit of a lag there, but we've seen this upward trend. May has been a tough month for rates overall.
And most of us that look at mortgage rates, unless you're actively in the market, you're looking at the weekly numbers. The Freddie Mac numbers when they come out. So you're not seeing the day-to-day craziness of it.
The intraday changes, yeah.
So, it's and again, as we've been saying for a couple of weeks now, the bond market is not acting the way you would expect. Blow-away jobs number, rates go down.
Inflation coming down.
Inflation go down, rates go up. It's like wait, what was that? It's
Right.
like,
Right.
I did that, and I did.
I like that. That was good.
You know.
We should slow-mo that at some point.
Oh, that's going to be the teaser probably on this week's episode. When I started doing TV bits, when I started here, my wonderful coworkers in marketing would do all kinds of stuff to the videos of me. They were funny. It was a nice hobby of theirs. Anyhow, on that note, we got one more set of breaks, and then we're going to finish up with 2 really funny stories. I promise. See you in a minute.
Calling all real estate investors. I'm Scott Nadler, VP of Mortgage Lending at CrossCountry Mortgage, and it's time to level up your portfolio. Whether you're a seasoned pro or making your first investment, I'll find the right financing to maximize your returns. From single-family homes to multi-unit properties, I'm here to help you crush your investment goals. Ready to grow? Let's connect today and make it happen.
Hey, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. As an official moving partner of Brown Harris Stevens, we know that your clients deserve more than just a move. At Roadway Moving and Storage, we turn moving into an experience they will love. From specialized services to a white glove treatment, we've got it all covered. When you choose Roadway, you're choosing a peace of mind for your clients. Plus, our referral program is the most rewarding in the industry. Want to learn more? Shoot me an email at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
We're back. Our final section, I promise. Now, Scott wasn't here the last time we did the show, but we railed about the Federal Reserve's plan to spend $2.5 billion on their headquarters. Remember this, right? We were talking about their private elevators to their private dining room, and they're losing money, and they're wrong about everything, and they gave us inflation. Why? $2.5 billion? This was okayed several years ago. So us and a lot of people complained, why do you need to have the Palace of Versailles as your headquarters? Like, can't you do work like the rest of us in an office, like normal, without private elevators? Well, maybe they heard us, because in a memo, the Fed chair has said they're going to reduce staff by 10%. Is that going to save us $2.5 billion? No, it is not, but maybe it's a start. But if you're going to reduce the staff by 10%, do we need to renovate the headquarters? Is that a legitimate question to ask? Outside of why would we give you buffoons a reward for messing up inflation? Is that too?
Well, now there's just going to be more room in the headquarters for the Fed members, right? There's less people walking around, so less crowded.
Make their offices bigger.
Make their offices bigger
in other agencies.
Exactly. Yeah, makes sense.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And they say, look, this stuff was approved. We were allowed to do it. Okay, things have changed. You've lost money the last 2 years.
Right.
A lot of it. So maybe you should just, enjoy
it's like parents
what you
moving
have.
into a brand new mansion and then shipping their kids off to a boarding school.
Now you tell me this. I didn't know that existed. Maybe because I'm not rich. But so.
Not yet.
Now, a logical question was, well, how many employees is that? Well, we're here for you with the data. So they have just under 24,000 employees now. So that's going to take it down to under 22,000, give or take. So, we'll see. Hopefully they'll hold on to the good ones. This is going to be done through attrition, they expect. It's a nice way of saying we're just going to encourage people to retire.
Yes.
Because I'm sure they probably get great retirement plans.
Many companies do reduce their workforces by 10% per year. It's not an abnormal thing. It's just in the timing of it is interesting in light of their
While
new
Jerome
headquarters.
Powell himself said, quote, experience here and elsewhere shows that it's healthy for any organization to periodically take a fresh look at its staffing and resources. Everybody else does it. We got to get on board with that. And this is, when people get mad about the Doge cuts and everything, I always say, well, the private sector does it. Why can't they? And how do you know what the appropriate level of federal government employment is? How do you know what they're cutting? We hear crazy stories on both sides, but you can usually cut at most organizations without too noticeable a change. Right. There's exceptions. Mm-hmm. If you got rid of me, I mean, come on. This be an empty chair and a bunch of bobbleheads here. Who's, Scott's like, I'm going to have to talk twice as much.
Yeah. No one wants that.
No. All right. So now we're going to end on a funny note.
What do you got?
Now, if I were going to ask the panel here, you know this already, I think, so we're not going to ask you. Who are New York City's worst litterers? Gender, age, what do you think? Who litters? And they asked the people themselves. This isn't like people standing around seeing who's throwing candy wrappers on the floor. They ask people, do you litter? And who are the worst litterers?
I have no idea.
No idea? Well, I don't, but I'd have no idea either. Although I probably would have gotten the age.
So think like age and gender.
And which borough they live in, too. That also does matter.
Like teenagers, maybe?
Well, almost. So the answer is it's men. That makes sense. Thanks, Lena. From the Bronx and Queens, that's you, Ray.
He's proud. He's proud.
Between the ages of 18 and 34. So that's going to exclude a lot of you people in Queens. Maybe the Mets litter a lot. I don't know. They got people between 18 and 34.
It is funny that it was people admitting. They were like going to them and saying, yeah, it is me.
What you going to do about it?
It's a problem. I admit that it's a problem, and I'm the culprit.
All right, so you can imagine what their excuse is, and this is the reason probably most people litter. There wasn't a trash can close enough, or they were in too much of a hurry. Too much of a hurry, I think, I don't buy so much. The one thing I've noticed, and this is since 9/11, and it's probably for security reasons, it's a lot harder to find trash cans. Subway platforms, good luck finding a trash can.
I was just in Chicago, and that city is so clean. Downtown Chicago it was incredible. I mean, there was nothing on the ground.
That's what they always say about
amazing.
Disney. Like Disney, you could eat off the ground. It's like, will the food be cheaper if I do that? Because it costs. No, so here's the interesting thing. Roughly 8 in 10 of the New Yorkers they surveyed believe the city has a trash problem. But 38% of the people they surveyed admit to tossing their garbage in the street every once in a while. In the street, not even on the sidewalk, in the street. Like, here you go. Take it. I don't want it anymore.
Yep.
Only 29% claim they've, quote, never littered before. Now, I have a question for those people because I think these are used to be the worst litterers to me, and that's smokers. Because you're walking outside, you finish your cigarette, you're throwing it on the ground.
It's also the city that never sleeps, right? So you're talking about 18 to 34-year-olds who are out late, they're partying, they're drunk, they're getting pizza, they're getting food late night. They're not thinking clearly. If they have a paper plate that they just finished a slice of pizza, they're not thinking I got to find a garbage can for this.
No, they want another slice of pizza. They don't.
Yeah, and they're throwing them on the ground, and they're on to the next thing. So normally, I'm typically up pretty early, and you'll see the aftermath of a night out where there's just litter everywhere.
Yeah, no, it's a pet peeve of everybody. Like you don't want to see people. Yeah, especially when they do it and they don't care. They're doing it in front of a lot of people. Plus, there's cameras everywhere. It's not.
Would you confront someone if you saw a 30-year-old?
It depends. Like if they threw the litter and it hit me, then yeah, I probably would. Or if my son is now taller than me, but when he was little, then I'd say, you see, don't you do that, Greg? And I would say it loud enough but before we get on the pet peeve thing, because I want to get this to a larger scale. We got a lot of grievances to air, so we've got to move quickly. But does anybody want to guess what category of and age group were the least likely to be litter bugs? According to them, or they're the worst liars. Women 45 and above. So either they're all lying or they're just that.
I believe it.
I believe that. Mm-hmm.
Now, look, I think that's a pet peeve of everybody. But we all have these pet. You talk about confronting people.
I have a lot of pet peeves.
Yeah, all right, you go first.
I want to hear yours.
Okay, so I take the Long Island Railroad in. Now the trains are more crowded. For so long, you could have a 3-seater to yourself. There was hardly anybody in the trains. Now it's more crowded. And now on my train alone, there's a person who puts a bag on the seat to their left and the seat after that. So this person is occupying 3 seats. That, most of us are paying over $300 a month to ride the trains. So we want a seat, and I have no problem saying, excuse me. And they act surprised, like, why are you bothering me? Because you're the only, rude, I'm not going to use bad language, that is trying to take 3 seats. If you have 3 tickets, then go for it, but you don't. Between that and the people with their feet on the seats. Because now it's not when there's seats facing them, they're just turning sideways and using the 3 seats. You see a lot of people on the way home sleeping on the seats and they don't care that they're dirtying up seats. I can't think of a ruder thing to do. They just think that
Do you
you're the
give
most
them like a
important-
nasty look?
I don't, and I don't confront them because I usually can find another seat. I'm trying to be a mild-mannered person, but think about it. How many fights a day do you think you could get into if you were easily offended? A couple at least. Somebody cuts you off on their way to the train station. Somebody's taking up too many seats. Somebody bumps into you. Somebody's on their phone doing stupid things, and that upsets you. Somebody's being rude in general. Somebody cuts a line. I mean, how often have you been waiting for an escalator in a train station and somebody just walks down the whole end and just says, I'm going to cut everybody off because I'm more important than all those people waiting. So
on that same token, I go to this gym and I go early in the morning. It's the same group of people. And there's a guy that will put his towel on one machine, his water bottle on another, and his bag on another. And he'll just rotate between all. So if you want to use one of those machines, you need to confront him to see, is it okay for me to use
this? And it's a gym because he could be big, right?
And and he's a bigger guy. But everyone's like rolling their eyes or looking like this guy's taking up all these machines and he's using them once every 5 minutes. Someone else can go in there. It's a pet peeve of many people in that
why
gym.
don't you tell management? That's what management's there for.
Yeah, they don't do anything. They don't do anything.
Well, it's a thing in general. That's why some of us, have issues with weight or other problems because it's just easier not to do nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to do anything. Sorry, I got bad grammar now. I'm so aggravated.
On the commuting front, though, I take the subway almost everywhere. Subway is underground. To get to street level, you have to go upstairs or in a
escalator, elevator, yeah.
And almost on a daily basis, I will be caught behind someone who's walking upstairs and they're texting, they're scrolling through social media. And when you're doing that, you're not walking as quickly. And you just get caught behind someone who is scrolling on Instagram, looking at nothing. And it's like, dude.
How do you know they're not on
way.
Loan Daddy's Instagram page?
I know.
Do you
I'm
verify that
looking.
before you get mad at them?
I'm peeking over their shoulder to see what they're looking at. That's so important that they can't wait 15 seconds to get onto the street. No, they can't
because they're. And then these people sometimes will stop, which is even more dangerous because it's like stopping on the highway.
Yeah.
Or they'll do the stop and turn around and bump into you and look at it like it's your fault.
Yeah.
It's like you can't just decide because you were looking at Loan Daddy's page that you have to turn around and because you missed the block you were walking down and you bang into me and you look at me like I knew and I jumped in your way.
So my move now is, so the right side you'll have people standing, on the left side you have people walking. If I get caught behind, there's nowhere else to go. If I get caught behind someone who is scrolling and walking slowly, I will say, excuse me, trying to get through. There's nowhere to get through.
Right.
So it'll wake them up to be like, there's nowhere. He'll just realize, or she will just realize that they need to start walking. And it works.
Or they'll just ignore you. I mean, sometimes it's...
They can't ignore me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't seen Loan Daddy in action. We gotta see that.
There's no action. I'm just a little bit more forceful, but saying, hey, I'm just trying to get through. And then they wake up.
Well, yes, I think. Well, my niece has, is one of these people that's always like, excuse you. Actually, she was going to make a line of shirts. We said, the excuse you shirts. It's tough. Again, you get into a fight every couple of minutes sometimes when you have, when you're on, especially mass transit, because it's too many people stuck in a small place that's always too hot, too cold, and running late. So.
I'd be curious to hear about other people's pet peeves in other big cities. Like people in Chicago, people in Boston, LA, like what are other, LA is probably traffic.
Right.
But other specific pet peeves per city that people experience would be an interesting thing to, so you can email us.
Yeah, it's ctl@bhsusa.com if you're in another city. In the suburbs, it tends to be a lot about traffic.
Or your neighbors.
Well.
What they're doing in their lawn or their garbage.
In the span of like, just a couple weeks apart, 2 houses right near me were renovating, siding, windows, that stuff. And the crews were starting at before 8 o'clock in the morning. And I get it. They want to get it done. They're following the ordinances, I would assume. But, in some places, if your landscaper comes too early, that you could get in a beef with a neighbor.
Yeah.
It's like, why are your landscapers here at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, like kind of thing. So yeah, I think we all need to be respectful of other people and where they're going and their time. And if we're a little nicer to each other, maybe we won't be so angry all the time.
Or just talk about them behind their back. On
Yeah,
the
do it
podcast.
behind their back. Like, don't you just hate them? Isn't that loan daddy a real pain in the butt? Yeah.
If I had a dime for every time I heard that.
With
Greg.
his trips to exotic places, not inviting us, hanging out. He's probably going to the Knicks game Wednesday. He's not inviting us.
I am not. You guys should come to the bar.
All right,
You guys are welcome.
Share the
Got a-
deets,
got
as
a
we
table.
would say. So if we say put on Loan Daddy's tab, they'll know what we're talking about?
Yes, they will.
Okay. We'll let you know how that turns out on the next episode of Crossing the Line. Well, I think that's going to do it. Did we miss anything? I don't think so.
I think we're good.
I mean, we could complain about stuff all day. Normally, New York sports teams would be one of the things, but with the Knicks in the conference finals, the Yankees and Mets each in first place, and the fact that football season hasn't started yet, so we can't complain about that.
0 losses there.
Well, thank you, Lone Daddy. Thank you, Ray and Lena. Hopefully you heard some of Lena's comments. They're funny. You always hear Ray's clapping because he's the loudest clapping podcast. is Ray.
And yawning today.
It is Monday. It is. If we weren't talking nonstop, we might be on too. But again, thanks everybody for tuning in and listening, and have a great week. And we look forward to crossing the line again. Although we will not be on next week because we film Mondays and it's Memorial Day. So thanks again to all the veterans that gave their life for this country. I always include some stuff about Memorial Day in the blog. Because how much can you thank people that gave their lives for our freedom? There's nothing we can do, but we'll never stop trying. And to all you veterans out there, God bless you, and thanks for your service. And you have a better week than us because you deserve it.
Agreed.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks.